Okay. There you go. Okay. Welcome again. So as we normally do, we're going to start with a little meditation. And today we're going to do a script actually on the ecological self. And you'll get that script after this workshop today. It's from David J. Falco Green Bay, and it's inspired by the deep ecology work. And kind of in the theme of what we are going to be exploring today. Yeah. So as always, if you want to, you can turn off your camera. Please mute yourself. And if you are sitting on a chair, slide forward a bit on your chair so that you can keep your upper body upright, right? And it's supported using your skeleton, right? Rather than like leaning back into your chair. And then you can either close your eyes or you can have a lower gaze, about 3-4 feet in front of you. And then let's begin. We're going to begin with 3 deep grounding breaths. We're going to inhale slowly and fully, and exhale slowly and completely. And then you are going to switch to just breathing naturally and normally. And focus your intention to what it feels like to breathe right now. Just breathing. Normal breathing. And then as you inhale, feel the air into your nostrils and your chest and your belly. Notice where your breath feels most alive. And the oxygen being absorbed in your lungs came from the trees and the grasses and the phytoplankton in the oceans, right? And all of the green plant beings. You thrive on oxygen that was exhaled by plants, by countless plant beings. And when you exhale, the carbon dioxide formed inside of your body may well be inhaled by plant beings. We living beings breathe in and out together. And so if it feels good to you on your next out breath, exhale some gratitude for this life-giving air. And then notice the weight of your body pressing into the chair or the ground, depending on where you're sitting. Well over half of our weight comes from the water in our body. And then imagine where that water came from. See in your mind's eye how the water gathered in the clouds, fell from the sky as rain, right? Flowed across the earth into a stream or a river or a lake. Or perhaps it seeped down into the earth and joined the groundwater. Remember what it feels like to be thirsty and to drink a glass of cool water. And so if it feels good to you on your next out breath, exhale gratitude for the clouds, for the rain, the stream, the river, and the lake inside of you. And this is the same water that has supported life on Earth for millions upon millions of years. And the food that you eat gives you energy and all of the nutrients your body needs to live. What have you had to eat today, and where did that food come from? You know, from the sun, from the soil, the water, the air, all that fungi, the plant beings, perhaps also animal beings. Right? And so on next exhale, see if you can feel the warmth of your body in your belly, the heat inside of your body that can be traced back through the web of life to the sun. And then once again, notice the weight of your body pressing into the chair or ground. Feel how the bones in your skeleton allow you to hold yourself upright. And then feel how the gravity of the earth pulls you into your chair, right? Pulls you toward the ground. And the minerals in your bones come from the very earth that pulls on you, from the very earth that holds you close. Right? And before they were part of the earth, these minerals were born in the stars. Can you feel the clouds and the rivers in your veins, the breath of the plants in your lungs, the energy of the sun in your belly, and the minerals of the earth in your bones? Can you feel how your life is connected to all other life on this planet? Right? It feels good to you on your next out breath to exhale that gratitude, right, for the winds and the waters, the plant and animal beings, and the living planet of which you are a small part. And then slowly in your own time, you can come back to us, turn back your camera on. And if you feel inspired, please share in the chat how that was for you, or what came up. Welcome to our third workshops. Welcome if we have new participants. So the theme of the workshop today is seeing with new eyes and seeing with ancient eyes and deep time. So, oh yeah, Micah says, so relaxing, connecting to everything and everyone else. Yeah, I love that. Last week we talked about honoring the pain for the world, right? And so we leaned into the experience of grief and all the other feelings attached to it. And we learned about the 5 gates of grief. We talked about ambiguous loss, and we really began to, know the immensity of our hearts and our minds. Yeah. And some of you may have even felt into the isolation, right? That we can also feel in our private pain. So I hope that this small group sharing could ease some of that loneliness for you. Yeah. Peaceful in the forest by fresh water. I love that. Okay, so I'm going to share the slides with you right now. Let's see. Where did you go? Share screen. There you go. Okay, so Joanna Macy, this is paraphrased, but I really love this. It's in one of the books of hers. She says, the very distress, such as fear, anger, sadness, that when hidden seems to separate us from other people, it is also uncovering our connective tissue. And the realization is a turning point, right? So we shift from a new way of seeing ourselves in relation to our world. It's like a turning of the tide. As we allow the world's pain to flow in, it rearranges our internal structures, using our despair to turn it and raise it into new understandings, into new seeing. Yeah. She says, the heart that breaks open can hold the whole universe. So instead of privatizing, right, repressing, pathologizing our pain for the world, whether it's the fear, the grief, the outrage, the despair, right, we honor it, right? We learn to reframe it as suffering with or compassion, right, for ourselves and the world. And this, she says, this brings us back to life because it's a state of aliveness that we can find ourselves in. And so I want to remind you again of what we talked about in our first session. Yeah, finding that balance between internal and external activism, right? The ability to move back and forth between difficult information and tools to self-soothe, right? To calm emotional reactions. And that titrating helps us grounded. And the spiral really provides a great container for the work. Yeah, and all of this is part of the work. The gratitude, right? Finding the presence and beauty despite the horrific news, honoring our feelings, and then connecting to the wider web that gives us strength and inspiration to move forward. And this is what we're focusing on today. So we start to begin to open outwards and connect with our collective existence, right? We are starting to notice that there is something bigger that can hold us, bigger than our own personal strength. If you had a chance to read The Greening of the Self, the article I shared with you, at the top of the article, there's this quote from John Seed, which is a friend of Joanna Macy, and he says, "May we turn inwards and stumble upon our true roots in the intertwining biology of this exquisite planet. May nourishment and power pulse through these roots and fierce determination to continue the billion-year dance." Right? So it's almost like part of this stage is asking this question: how do we become Earth in human form? How do we widen our identity? So Joanna Macy likes to tell the story of her friend John Seed, who's the founder of the Rainforest Information Center in Australia. And you may have read the story in the Greening of the Self article. But she says, so one day in 1985, they were walking through the rainforest in New South Wales. And she asked him, "You talk about the struggle against the lumber companies and politicians to save the remaining rainforest. How do you deal with the despair?" And he says, "I try to remember that it's not me, John Seed, trying to protect the rainforest. Rather, I am part of the rainforest protecting itself. I'm the part that has recently emerged into human thinking." Right? So this is like what Joanna Macy calls the greening of the self, when we discover our mutual belonging, right? Our own, deep ecology, right? And it's really creates like a profound interconnectedness with all lives, and from the present and from the past and from the future, right? It's like really questioning and turning over into this like wider awareness of who we are and what we are. And Alan Watts called it like a skin encapsulated ego, right? That gets cracked open from its constricted shell. So we're placed into a wider construct of identity, moving towards what Arne Naess said, the ecological self, or the greening of the self, right? And I think there's something that, I just wanted to say about psychology entering all fields. I think it's a newer phenomenon, but as a therapist, of course, I highly value therapy, and I highly, especially honoring our pain, right? And I believe that we can benefit from an increased focus on mental health, and to encourage people and individuals to share their feelings, right? And to bring all traumas to light. And sure, it's like definitely better than, to speak our repressed truth than the alternative, which is kind of putting everything away and bury everything, right? And so, yeah, and I talk about this here, but I also want to say that the problem starts when we evaluate societal issues and personal issues solely through psychology model, right? Because what slips away when this language actually becomes the primary language of the human experience, right? When it becomes a medium through which much of modern discourse takes place, right? Through which everything is evaluated. When everything is assumed to be psychological, right? Then it becomes very much about the individual process. And the individual becomes like a primal unit of everything. And I don't know if you have experienced this, but, you can see this in activist movements, right? Where sometimes some activist movements are almost like abandoning more of the spiritual vocabulary of MLK or Gandhi or the Dalai Lama in favor of psychology as like an everyday language, right? So there's an article that came out from organizer Maurice Mitchell, who's like the national director of the Working Families Party. And he was talking about the transformation of the activist workplace into, he says, a theater of endless personal processing, right? So basically saying that progressive organizations can't get anything done anymore because they're constantly engaging in, and he said, internal war of psychologically driven discourse that centers around the worlds of trauma and harm. Let's stop and process everything again and again and again. And don't get me wrong, I think it's really important to acknowledge harm and when it's being done and to process it. But I think there's this fine balance, because we've also seen it can really stall movements when it becomes all about that and when it's the only language that we use. And so, yeah, it's important to me to state this because I've been talking here about finding that balance, right, between process and action, right, between internal and external activism. So to go back to that question, how do we widen our identity, right? How do we foster the greening of the self? We do have to move beyond that like self-encapsulated ego. And I think sometimes when we focus a lot on process, we can also disappear in this. Right. And especially for people who are activists and in the movement, it's really important to also, keep your eyes open. So again, the titration of it is really important. I shared with you all this video, if you had a chance to watch it, from Jeanette Armstrong, her talk at the Pioneers about the concept of us being the land and the land being us. And she said that it really is a human choice, like to destroy the land or to love the land so the land can love us back. And that's, I just really appreciate the framework of the work that we connects, right? That the spiral allows us to not get stuck in the privatization of pain, but to rather move us beyond that. And so in one way, part of it is like becoming and acting like ancestors of our future generations. And so we are going to move into a ritual practice, which is probably one of my favorite work that reconnects practices. And ritual, in a way, gives us an experience of, it takes us out of the ordinary time and it lets us deepen into a new experience. And this idea of the 7th generation ritual was really a gift that has been shared with the world from the people of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy of North America. So it's like the Mohawks, the Oneidas, the Onondagas, the Cayugas, and the Senecas. And they created for their like a way to unite the nations and to create a peaceful way of decision making, they started this confederacy. And as part of their everyday decision making, the confederacy basically considers the impact of the decisions that they're making on the people alive today, but also of those who will be alive 200 years from now on. So 7 generations out. And so in this ritual, we are going to move forward 200 years into the future with this magical opportunity, really, to talk to our ancestors and to be able to have a dialogue. And one of the key pieces of ritual is really stepping into a place of imagination. When and the great turning, in a way, it's the same place, right? It needs our imagination in order to become alive, right? And imagination, in a way, is also vital for change. It's vital for creativity. It's vital for experiencing new things, right? It's very alive and it's very vibrant. Anything really that has been invented existed somewhere in person's imagination, right? So I think we need to be able to imagine the world that we're dreaming and how we want the world to be. And climate psychologist Leslie Davenport says that part of the solution to treating eco-anxiety is to encourage engagement and shifting to a new narrative. If we are empowered to be part of a solution, a new vision of what is possible, we can shift out of a powerlessness state and a victim perspective, right? And so in this ritual, we're going to a place of imagination, right? And to these different dimensions that surround us, and to engage with our ancestors. And I think part of these like deep time, this is called deep time in the work that we connect. We also need to have a evolutionary connection. So from almost like the Big Bang forward to all the many stages of like life's development, right, on Earth, they all reside in our body, which is a pretty cool thought to think about. We're like a product of this like great evolutionary adventure. Yeah. All past life experiences already in our DNA. So the great turning is calling us into a place of imagining and bringing forth the world that is sustainable, that is just, that is regenerative, right? And it does presuppose that life continues into the future. So we're going to talk about some assumptions that we need to all agree on, and that it moves well beyond our own lifetime. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to stop here right now, stop our share. Let's see. So far, was there anything that came up? Let me just look at the chat. Yes to that, imagination. There will be time for questions before we go fully into the ritual, but I just want to make sure if there was anything that came up right now that you are burning to say out loud or to ask. Nope. Okay. Otherwise, just write in the chat. Okay, let's take a breath together. I welcome you into this place of the 7th generation ritual. Here we have an opportunity to move into that space of deep time and move 200 years into the future to 2223 and have a chance to speak with our ancestors being alive in this time of 2023, right? The time of the great turning. And so now this would be as if we would be able to go in time and speak with people in like 1823, right? They couldn't even imagine this world that we're in now, right? And we are in 2023, and in some ways we cannot imagine what the world would be like in 2223, 200 years from now, right? So for this ritual to work, there's some assumptions that we need to make. So the first one is, we're making the assumption that there will be humans living on Earth 200 years from now. Even if you come to believe otherwise, right? Please grant that assumption, yeah, for the purpose of this ritual. And then the second one is that the future ones have a cultural memory of what's happening, yeah, in our time of the early 21st century. Maybe it's carried through universities or storytellers, right? This is an important assumption because it means that humans are not all scattered in caves, yeah? They have a common culture and they're living in a life-sustaining community or communities, right? I mean, to be honest, like the industrial growth society really clearly can't last another 200 years. So let's hope so. And so the most creative assumption is that there's actually this opportunity where the veil is thin, so we can speak with people alive in 2223. And so a third of you is going to be future beings, and 2/3 are going to be yourself in our time, 2023, right? And Christina's going to assign you into groups of 3. Yeah, and she just assigned who's going to be the future being in your group. If for some reason you really don't want to be a future being, once I described everything in your small group, of course you can change, right? If somebody else volunteers, and you can talk about that. And we're going to do this in breakout groups. So they're going to be 3 questions that the future being is going to ask of their ancestors. So there's 1 future being and 2 ancestors in each group. And this is important. I will be asking those questions. What's that sound?
Our world is trembling.
Oh my God, hold on.
It's coming apart at the seams. The social systems, the political.
I was watching the life. It's actually a really good movie. It's the Life of Dying. Anyways, doesn't matter. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have 3 questions, yes, and those questions the future beings are going to pose, and but it's coming through my voice, right? So I'm going to broadcast my voice into the rooms, and then the 2 ancestors have an opportunity to answer those questions. Yeah, and each question will be timed. So you're going to have 6 minutes for each question. There are 3 questions, 6 minutes for each question. And I will send you a message when there are 3 minutes remaining. So if you haven't switched yet with the other ancestor, that would be a good time. You also can go back and forth, whatever rhythm you find yourself in that works for you. Yeah, and then I will let you know when there's time to finish. You're going to stay in the same group for the 3 questions. So you'll hear a gong again, and my voice is going to come into your room with the second question. And then the ancestors answer. And then the third question, my voice comes in, and the ancestors answer. Yeah. And then, actually, in this time, while the ancestors are answering, the future being, right? You are just listening to what's being said. You're not asking questions. They're not asking questions of you. They're just answering the question that's being posed. And if there's like a long pause or, the ancestors may need some assistance, you as the future being can rephrase the question, or you can say something like, is there anything more you would like to say? But oftentimes, if there's a lull in the conversation or silence, someone else will pick it up and share. So really the future beings are, the only job for you is to listen to what the ancestors are saying to you. And then after the third question, you future ones will have an opportunity to reflect back what you have heard from your ancestors and to share what's on your heart, right? So yeah, what you could say to them is like, knowing that the world that we're living in is happening because of the work that the people in 2023 have done, right? So maybe it's encouragement, maybe it's gratitude. Just follow what's alive for you in that moment, you know, and share it with them at the end when it's your turn, before we all go back into the time of the great turning. Yeah. Any questions about this?
I guess one question, Ava, will the questions prompt us to be thinking more forward looking versus if there's any reflection now or in the past, like the time scales?
Yeah, the prompts will make a lot of sense to you. They're longer questions. Yeah, and they're very clear. Yeah, but you will be speaking as an ancestor. So let's say if you're an ancestor, Leah, right? Okay, so the future being, the voice will come in and the question is basically ask of like, how did you do it? Right? Or what did you experience? And so the future beings want to know more about our present day experience in a way. And that's what you're going to answer to. Yeah.
So are we answering to present present day or 200 years ago?
So you are answering. So you're an ancestor. Because since we're 200, yeah, this is since we're 200 years in the future. Yes. No, I know. We're 200 years in the future. And so if you are a future being, you're not a future being, you're an ancestor. Okay. So we're 200 years. So you're going to be an ancestor, right? Living in 2023.
Okay, not 1823.
No, that was just an example I gave.
Okay, that's
yes. We're only going into the future right now. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Any other question or clarification that you need? Okay, wonderful. Also, Christine, if you have a moment, could you put the PDF? I have those questions as a PDF too, and so you just have it accessible in case you need it. In case for some reason you can't hear my voice, you can do that. Okay, yeah, Paul.
So the future being, which I'm not, I'm ancestor, is 200 years from now, and they know what's happened. As the ancestor, I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, that's part of the imagination part.
So am I supposed to make up what I think is going to happen, or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It'll be more clear when you hear it. The question, the prompts for you as ancestors are very clear. But yeah, a lot of it you may just make up.
Okay.
And some of it, when it's more about, there's some questions about how you felt that may feel more true to you right now. But the question of how did you do it, you may need to use some imagination with that one. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes. Any other questions? Oh, you're putting them in here. Does the PDF not work?
For some reason, it says
Okay.
I don't have access, so I'm just copying and pasting real fast.
Yeah, just don't read them yet. I don't want you to actually see them.
I will stop posting them.
Okay. Yeah. Don't read them yet because I want you to just really take them in. Maybe we can take them out.
Can
Yeah, I'm gonna delete them.
The
Sorry.
chat doesn't follow us to our small groups, I don't think. So it'll probably disappear.
Okay. Yeah, the voice works though, so we're all good. We're all good. Yes. Okay. If it doesn't work and you don't get it, just come out of your group and find me, and then we'll figure it out, right? But the voice broadcast should work for you. Okay. Any other last question before we go in?
Pause the recording.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the whole moving into the space right now, so feel free to still record it. We're not going into groups yet. Okay. Let's see. So. Okay, take a breath, everyone. Because we are going to travel through time. And we are moving from 2023, right, to 2223. So I invite you to close your eyes, that's comfortable, and just step into the space of imagination and deep time. We are moving from 2023 out into the future surrounding us. Moving to 2050, 2080, 2100, 2125, 2150, 2175, coming into 2200, 2223. So greetings, my friends. We who are alive here in 2223 have the most amazing opportunity through a little bit of magic, where the veil is thin, so we can actually have communication back in time, 200 years. Imagine that. To talk with our ancestors who are alive in the time of the Great Turning. The most challenging times in our history has led to the world that we are living in today. And so we have this incredible gift to talk for a short amount of time to our ancestors. And I am going to invite you into smaller council rooms now, where we will be able to greet these ancestors and learn from them, and be able to share a little bit with them in this great time, in this great gift of time. Yeah, so we can stop recording right now or pause it. Although we are going to do reflections after this in big group, so maybe you don't want to. Okay. So this poem is for the wild ones, and you'll get that one too, so don't worry. No matter how hard they try, they cannot keep us apart. They can pour concrete over the rich, dark earth, put us in plastic chair inside a sheetrock box, hook us up on electronic devices and tell us we have to stay there all day. And still we will be breathing the breath of towering pines, growing on rugged mountain slopes, and tiny green plankton floating in distant seas. And even though the water we drink travels through many miles of pipe, is doused with chlorine and maybe contained in plastic bottles, still we will be drinking water that has tumbled over granite boulders, hibernated in frozen lakes, and reflected the morning sun from a spider's web. And even though the salad we eat may be grown hundreds of miles away, harvested and washed by hands we will never see, and packaged in a plastic box, still we will be eating leaves from plants whose roots embrace the fertile earth as their tender green bodies reached for the sun. And no matter how relentlessly we have been trained to sit still, to hold our tongues, to follow the rules, even when they make no sense, still we are animals of flesh and blood, kin to deer and bear and whale, with untamed passions in our hearts and deep wisdom in our bones. Still there is a wild one inside us, running barefoot through the forest, gathering sweet berries, dancing around the fire, praying to the sun and singing to the moon. This is from Kai Siedenberg. So today we dedicate this work to this ever-changing web of life, to all the creatures and the people and the cultures and the whole living biosphere, the children and the elders, the wild ones, those asleep, awakening or awakened, those needing support or giving support. Today, we're dedicating this work to you, to your learnings, to your efforts, and to your love for this world. May you find peace in the challenges you face. To you and to our community, so be it. Thank you. Thanks for showing up today, everyone. I hope I see you all next week for our last one.
So much.
Yes, have a good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Micah.